We're now going to transition into our sermon time together, and we're going to have some leadership here live and some via video as well. The middle schoolers and high schoolers have worked very hard to reflect on what silver linings they see in their pandemic season as well. We've been sharing about this for the last several weeks, and I look forward to hearing their input. We're going to begin with a scripture reading from Claire Perkins Rock, and if you'll all watch the screen with me, we'll share in that together.
Colossians 3 says, "Put on compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Be tolerant with each other, and if someone has a complaint against anyone, forgive each other. As the Lord forgave you, so also forgive each other. And over all these things put on love, which is the perfect bond of unity. The peace of Christ must be in your hearts always, a peace into which you are called in one body. And be thankful, people. The word of Christ must live in you richly. Teach and warn each other with all wisdom by singing psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs. Sing to God with gratitude in your hearts. Whatever you do, whether in speech or action, do it all in the name of God and love."
And thank you to Claire for that reading of scripture this morning. I now invite our first speaker to come forward, Grayson Harms, who is 16 and rising into the 11th grade. Thank you, Grayson.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to let you see my face for this. I'm giving you a fair warning. This is not a very happy talk. Everyone here has struggled in one way or another during this pandemic. People have lost their loved ones, their jobs, and have struggled financially. I have been fortunate enough not to have any of that happen to me, but that is not to say I haven't struggled as well. Last year, I was a freshman in high school entering a new school district. I had no friends, and I often sat alone at the lunch table and in class. When the pandemic hit, school ended early, and I never had that chance to make friends. For the past year in quarantine, I have had no one to talk to besides my family. I felt alone and unwanted by others, which led me to struggle mentally. I was hoping that doing online school would allow me time to work on my mental health, but it only made things worse. I was ignored by my teachers who didn't feel like putting effort into their jobs. I had a teacher tell me to give up on his class because he had no faith in my intelligence. I sat alone in my room for hours a day being told this, and I really let it get to me. I became depressed, not the type of depressed where I feel bummed out all day, but the type of depressed where my emotions went numb except a constant lingering pain, and I lost the motivation to even get out of bed. But I wasn't dying, was I? I didn't just lose my job. I wasn't struggling financially. To me, my pain wasn't valid because I saw others had it worse. Me turning to unhealthy eating habits to cope was nothing compared to someone coping with the passing of their grandmother. I had a lot of anxiety surrounding school, but it wasn't like I was failing like some of my classmates were. I said these things to myself, which only elevated my depression. I lived with my depression getting the best of me for so long. Eventually, I came to terms with the fact that pain didn't have to be visible to others to be valid. I worked so hard to prove to myself how strong I am. I finished the school year by proving those teachers wrong with a GPA of over 4.2. I focused more Thank you. I focused more on my physical health and have found my motivation to be active again. I still have a constant struggle with my mental health, but the important thing is that I have learned how strong I am. I am living through a pandemic. I did an entire year of online school, and I was able to start the process of mending my mental health, and for that, I am so proud of myself. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing, Grayson. We appreciate your words this morning. I would now like to welcome by video words from Maddie Hodgson, who is 13 and a rising 8th grader. And she has some words to share about what she's learned about being adaptive in this season.
Life is not a narrow path. If there's a tree in your way, there's always another way to get around it. If you are trapped and you have no clue what way to go, but you keep trying the same way, try and think of it in a different way. Like during the pandemic, we kept trying to get in-person activities and get it done, But if we just did it online, it would make it 10 times quicker to find the solution. So there's always another way, no matter what. Online school. People have had a really hard time during school before. When the pandemic caused people to go to online school, for some students that was the thing they needed, and it just made everything in their brain click. That has helped people during the pandemic because billions of people have been struggling with public school for years, and online school may have been the solution for them. Also, the pandemic has caused a major change in point of view, and we have adapted to that point of view easily. Now, we have adapted really quickly. Now that we know that we can do that, why not use it for other causes? Like, we could adapt to so many more new things, like people with disabilities, disorders, and lots of other, it could be a solution to lots of other things.
Thank you to Maddie for sharing some thoughts on adaptiveness. And may we be so wise to continue learning from what we have learned and creating new systems and new ways to access the world for others who have struggled long before this pandemic as well. Our next word comes from Tyler Eschelbrenner, who is 13 and a rising 8th grader, who has some very wise things to share about his experience with stress and what he's learned about coping strategies and the importance of connection along the way.
Hi, I'm Tyler Eschelbrenner, and today I'll be talking about stress and coping strategies. Through the COVID-19 pandemic, many teenagers have felt the stress, and it's not just about themselves. Sure, before that, we've had many things to stress us out before, but nothing compared to the COVID-19 pandemic. And I know a lot of people have the stereotype that teenagers are only ever worried about themselves or how they look or how other people act around them. But that's changed. And sure, that might have been true once, but not always. And now it's not true at all. Because now, through the COVID-19 pandemic, we've seen many people pass away and get severely injured from this pandemic. And we're not worried about how we look or how we act around other people. I mean, sure, it might be like in the back of our brains, but now our primary worries are about our loved ones or about like just how dangerous this virus can be and the vaccine and people not wanting to get the vaccine and the fact that still more people are dying because of this deadly virus. And through this, we've had to make new coping strategies because the level of stress is nothing we've ever seen before. So ways we've been able to cope with this stress is like a lot of us have found ourselves able to talk with our families and through the lockdown because we can't talk to anyone else. And I know that seems like like 1.5 years ago, that seems like torture to basically all the living teenagers. But now, it still might be for some, but for most of us, we've been able to talk with our families about what's stressing us out and just sit down and have conversations with them instead of just staring at our phones throughout the entire day. And that has really helped. Just getting the stress and the worries off our chest has helped us cope with them. And I know that seems weird, like telling someone else about your worries can help, but if you try, it's amazing how much it helps. It's crazy. Some other ways that stress has actually helped us is as stress levels move on, and being cooped up at home, we've actually started watching the news. And we've seen current events and what's happening in our community, and we're stressed out about it. We want to help. And through this, we've had enough time to see the change we want to make and make it happen. And this is really important because all the movements that are going on right now, the Black Lives Matter and Pride Month happening, and all these groups that are being held back and not given their full opportunities, we need to help. And this has given us a chance to do that. So that I'm thankful for. If everyone's worried about the bad things happening in our community, then we can see it and make it change. But if we're not worried about that and don't pay attention to it, there's no way it's going to change. So this has actually helped us play a more active role in our community. And by playing that role, we have defied everyone's expectations. And even though all this stress has pushed us to the brink, it has really called us back to ourselves, and we've been able to do things that like I mentioned before, that have really helped and got us some notice from the community. And even though some stress like that can help us help the community, not all stress is good. Like, if you're worried about some things and it's just like taking you over, I've experienced that and it sucks. But it doesn't help at all. Worrying about something won't get you anywhere. I love this quote, and I'm going to mention it. Worry is like a rocking chair. It gives you something to do, but won't get you anywhere. And that, I think, really explains how much worrying is useless. If you worry about some things, it's useless, but worrying about, like, the bad things in our community is really good. Because without that, no one can make a change.
Thank you to Tyler Eschelbrunder for sharing that. May we be so inspired to continue keeping our eyes and our hearts open to the hurt and marginalization of others in our world, and may we act accordingly. We have our word next from Dinah Hodgson, who is 14 and a rising 9th grader, on the importance of a fresh visibility for those struggling with mental health.
One of the things this pandemic has affected is mental health. And obviously that's not a good thing. A lot of people are struggling with depression and anxiety, which it's really, really hard to deal with. It's really hard to go through things like that, and it sucks. But one of the ways that it's positively affected mental health, or at least I say it's positive, is it's raised such an awareness for mental health that I don't think we could have gotten without a pandemic. Because of this pandemic, there's been a lot more people, like even celebrities, coming out about how like it's really affected the mental health, and like how this being alone a lot is affecting their depression. They feel really lonely all the time, or going out and seeing people again, it's affecting like anxiety, and it's making you really anxious because you aren't used to being around people. And I don't think that we could have gotten to this place where mental health isn't really such like a taboo topic if it weren't for so many people dealing with it and realizing this is a real thing that affects people. It affects the way you act. It affects the way you do day-to-day things that you might not have realized if you didn't have them. And if we have like raised an awareness for them through this pandemic. So while like mental health is not a good thing, it's like not good to struggle with, and it's really hard to deal with every day. It's great that we can talk about it more without feeling embarrassed about it, which is great. Like, you should not feel embarrassed about mental health struggles because that's valid and you deserve help and stuff. So I'm very happy that it's opened the conversation a lot more to mental health.
Thanks so much to Dinah, and as we continue to navigate this time, we recognize that many have struggled during the pandemic and many will struggle following the pandemic. And if there's any way that the staff here at Second can be supportive and help you get access to any care that you need, we would love to speak with you. Our final reflection comes from Mallory O'Neill and includes a 13-year-old and a rising 8th grader, a reflection on time and rethinking how we schedule ourselves and spend the precious hours that we do have.
Time. That's practically the only thing we had on our side during the hardest moments of this pandemic. We were all stuck at home, so our health and safety became a priority. We could do the things we enjoyed the most, take care of ourselves, and spend time, whether in person or online, with the people we care about. Because of the health dangers of the COVID-19 pandemic, we stayed at home and kept a close eye on our own health. Some of us may have wiped things off more, washed our hands more, etc. We wear masks, which aren't just protecting ourselves from COVID. We have wellness checks to see if we have any of the COVID symptoms. If there is something wrong, we seek help right away because it could be something worse than what we think it is. These are great practices that ensure our well-being, and we will hopefully continue these things in the future. Now that we've experienced being at home for so long, I miss the things that were a part of our daily lives and appreciated them that much more. I definitely know people, including myself, that were genuinely excited to go back to school after we had been online. But being at home for so long also gave us opportunities to find new things we enjoyed. A lot of people picked up new hobbies such as baking, crafting, reading, or writing. We also spent more time outside doing physical activities or just enjoying nature. Spending time for yourself and out of the hustle and bustle of life is extremely important for your mental health. And now that we know how nice it is, hopefully we will continue giving ourselves that opportunity to take a break. Another plus of this pandemic has been a lot of family time. Like, a lot. Personally, my sister and I were not pleased at first, but we actually got to know each other more, if you can believe that. Family bonding time is super important, and we were given a perfect opportunity to do just that. I hope you take into consideration that this pandemic has not been all bad. So many important practices, new skills, and maybe some newfound friends have been amazing silver linings of this pandemic.
And thank you. That last little bit was just Mallory's introduction to our breakout room time, which we're going to move into now, and an invitation to reflect together, whether here in person or on Zoom, with a silver lining that you've seen from your pandemic season. And so Jimmy is going to get Zoom rooms set up. You'll see an invitation here shortly to accept that if you're on Zoom. If you're here in person, we invite you to turn to some neighbors and maybe reflect on what you see as silver linings in your pandemic season, and share with one another, and we'll return in a few minutes back to worship.